About 18 months ago, I met a Melbourne woman, a genealogist, and in her spare time she was helping some of the people from the mental institutions, which have now closed. A lot of the guys from there struggling a lot with identity loss and just erosion of memories, and I guess struggling to find their place in society again after coming out of the institutions. And what she was doing was finding as much out from them as she could, and then digging through the records and the archives and finding out where they were born and where they believed the first school, and things that we all take for granted, but a lot of them didn't know through, I guess, a number of reasons. Long-term institutionalisation, and sometimes illicit drug use or prescription drug use, or the effects of treatments such as shock therapy, that sort of thing. And so she put together these little, what she called life books. She'd go to their first school and take a picture, and the first house, and present them with these little folios of memories that they'd forgotten, and would jog their memories for a lot of them. And for some of them, it's really helped. There was one guy who was in an orphanage at age 11, and his mum was killed by a car, and he didn't know where she was buried. He'd been to the funeral, but he'd never seen the grave. And I think 20 or 30 years later, it'd become his lifelong mission to find the grave, and so he'd just go aimlessly from Melbourne Cemetery to Melbourne Cemetery, stumbling around, just hoping to come across it. And it wasn't until this lady, Kath Ensor, helped him and found his grave at Springvale Cemetery, and went there. He was able to see it for the first time and to grieve properly, and he went from being fairly lethargic and despondent about life to getting a part-time job, and he's bought a bike and rides regularly, and bought a suit and starts going out on weekends. And so it's made a big impact. And it's like I say, it's things that you all take for granted, but being able to find your identity and fill in some of those blanks is a huge thing for a lot of people.
These are the ruins of Leninakan. In the central square of the town, the clock shows the exact time disaster struck. The second largest city in Armenia is in ruins. We saw houses turned into heaps of metal and concrete. Schools and kindergartens turned into heaps of rubble.
We went to a former earthquake zone called Gilmary, which was levelled by an earthquake in, I think, the early 90s. And 20-something years later, there's people still living in shipping containers in minus 30 degrees temperatures. And we're walking along this icy road. It was about minus 10, minus 15 degrees. And I was taking pictures of a shipping container, which was a house with a string of washing out the front. This guy came running towards me and grabbed me by the arm and speaking in Armenian, and he was really intense and quite urgent in what he was trying to say, and I thought maybe we'd offended him and trying to appease him, but he starts saying coffee, coffee, and he's dragging us towards his house, his shipping container. And we went inside and met his wife. He told us his story. It turned out he was a veteran of 3 wars, and he started rolling up his sleeves and lifting his shirt, showing us bullet holes. He'd been shot 22 times. And his brother had been killed in Afghanistan. And I'd lost a brother too when I was 18 who was killed in a farming accident, and I told him that, and they were affected by that. And there was, this instant sort of bond, I suppose, between us. And after lunch, he went out and came back with a couple of old Fanta bottles that looked like water, and poured them into shot glasses. Turned out it was peach vodka that they'd made with peaches from their tree outside their shipping container. So we had that, and got to be happy. And he popped on a CD of Armenian music, and he got up dancing, and he pulls us up and we're dancing. And it's one of those moments, like you're in minus 15 degrees temperatures, and you're dancing in a shipping container with 2 people that you don't know. And, it was incredible.